police officer looked exhausted. He was standing on the porch of my grandfather's cabin, a place that was supposed to be my sanctuary, trying to mediate an act of pure, undiluted madness. Brenda, the president of the Whispering Valley Estates, Homeowners Association, was in the middle of a full-blown theatrical meltdown, her face a mask of righteous, hysterical fury. "He's a squatter, officer," she shrieked, her voice a shrill instrument that seemed to make the very pine needles on the ancient trees tremble. She was pointing a trembling, accusatory finger at me. "This property's owner died months ago. This man just showed up. He has no legal right to be here. He is hostile, he's threatening, and he is a danger to this community. I want him arrested and removed, now." I stood there in my own doorway, my heart hammering against my ribs, a strange sense of calm settling over me amidst the chaos. Had made one phone call, just one, to the only person I knew to call. And as Brenda continued her tirade, a new sound began to intrude upon her performance. It started as a low, distant thumping, a sound that didn't belong in our quiet mountain valley. It grew louder, closer, a rhythmic, powerful hump-hump-thump that seemed to be coming from the sky itself. Brenda paused, her mouth still open, a look of confusion on her face. The police officer looked up, shielding his eyes. Saw it. A sleek, black executive-class helicopter, the kind you see in movies, was descending from the sky, out, its rotors kicking up a hurricane of pine needles and dust. It didn't land at the community helipad. It landed with a breathtaking display of precision right in the middle of the pristine green meadow next to my cabin. The side door slid open, and a man emerged. He was an older man, in his 70s, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit that probably cost more than my truck. He ducked under the still-spinning rotors and began to walk towards us with a look of calm, absolute, and terrifying authority. He ignored the police officer. He ignored me. He walked right up to a now silent and utterly bewildered Brenda. "Brenda," the man said, his voice quiet but carrying the unmistakable weight of a man who was used to being obeyed. "My client, Mr. Thompson, the man who owns this entire valley, would like a word with you. He's on my phone. And I suggest you choose your next words very, very carefully." And that's when everything went wrong. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment. What would you do if this happened to you? And subscribe to HOA Files. To understand that moment, that beautiful, surreal, and absolutely catastrophic arrival, you have to understand my grandfather and the company he kept. My name is Alex. Until 6 months ago, my life was a quiet academic one. I was a history archivist, a man who spent his days in the silent, dusty world of old documents and forgotten stories. My grandfather, Arthur, was a man I barely knew. He was a legend in our family, a quiet, intensely private man who had made a fortune in his youth and had then simply disappeared, buying a massive historic log cabin and the 1,000 acres of pristine mountain valley that surrounded it, and becoming a recluse. When he passed away, his will was a shock. It left it all to me, his quiet, bookish grandson. I was now the owner of a historic cabin and a vast, beautiful wilderness that I had no idea what to do with. My grandfather's lawyer, a distinguished, powerful, and deeply intimidating man named Mr. Blackwood, met me at the cabin to hand over the keys and the mountain of legal documents. "Your grandfather is a very dear and loyal friend of mine for 50 years, Mr. Blackwood had said. His eyes filled with a genuine sadness. He handed me his private, unlisted cell phone number. "The world is full of vultures, Alex. Your grandfather knew that. He was a quiet man, but he was not a weak one. If you have any trouble at all with this place, you call me directly. Day or night, I owe him that much." The problem was that my grandfather's valley was no longer entirely his. Decades ago, he had sold off a few hundred acres on the valley floor to a developer. That land had become the Whispering Valley Estates, an ultra-exclusive, gated community of gaudy, multi-million-dollar mansions. My grandfather's historic cabin and its surrounding land was now in holding. A beautiful, rustic island of authenticity in a sea of Newmany excess, and the self-appointed queen of this new, glittering kingdom was the HOA president, Brenda. Brenda was a woman who seemed to be at war with anything that was old, authentic, or not dripping with the kind of ostentatious wealth she so clearly worshipped. And my grandfather's cabin, a place of quiet, understated history, was in her eyes. A derelict shack that was a personal insult to her and her community's prestige. My very first encounter with her was the day I arrived to take possession of the property. I was in my beat-up old pickup truck, wearing dusty jeans and a t-shirt, looking more like a handyman than the new owner of 1,000-acre valley. She intercepted me at the turnoff to my private driveway. "Excuse me," she'd called out, her voice sharp with unearned authority. "This is a private community. Deliveries are only allowed between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. "I'm not a delivery," I'd said. "I'm Alex. I'm the new owner of the old Miller cabin." She looked me up and down, her face a mask of pure, undisguised disgust. "You," she'd said the word a small, sharp insult. "Well, that's unexpected. You should know that this cabin is a teardown. It's a blight on our community. I am prepared on behalf of a consortium of concerned residents to make you a very generous all-cash offer to take this problem off your hands." The offer she gave me wouldn't have paid for the land the cabin's woodshed sat on. "No, thank you," I said, my voice tight. "The cabin is not for sale." The look she gave me was one of pure, venomous rage. I had not just refused her offer, I had defied her vision. She was not a woman who tolerated defiance. The war had begun. The harassment started almost immediately. She began a campaign to devalue my property, to make my life so miserable that I would be forced to sell to her. She filed a series of anonymous and completely false complaints with the county, complaint that my grandfather's old pristine septic system was failing and polluting the groundwater. A complaint that the old-growth forest on my property was a catastrophic fire hazard. A complaint that the historic hand-built stone wall that lined my property was unstable and at risk of collapse. Each complaint triggered a new, invasive and stressful inspection from a different county agency. And each time the inspectors would leave, scratching their heads, confirming that my property was not only safe, but was a beautiful and well-maintained piece of local history. My inner monologue was a raging storm. I was trying to grieve my grandfather, to get to know the beautiful, quiet land he had left me. And this woman, this relentless, hateful bully, was turning my new life into a bureaucratic nightmare. Brenda, furious that her official attacks were failing, decided to escalate. The HOA board, which she ruled like a dictator, passed a new, sweeping bylaw. Masterpiece of legal fiction, rezoned all the HOA common areas that bordered my property. They were no longer designated as simple green belts. They were now officially designated as future community development and expansion zones. It was a clear, unambiguous threat. She was telling me that she was going to build right up to my property line, to destroy my privacy, to erase the very solitude that made my cabin so special. Her next move was a campaign of psychological warfare. She started bringing her wealthy friends, her potential investors, as she called them, onto the HOA common land right at the edge of my property. I would be sitting on my porch trying to read, and I would hear her loud, booming voice just 100 feet away. "And this, of course, is the problem property," she'd say, loud enough for me to hear every word. "But once the current occupant is removed, we will be building a magnificent, new, glass and steel mansion right on this spot. The views will be spectacular." It was a constant, grinding, and deeply unsettling assault on my peace of mind. The anger inside me was building. This was more than just harassment. This was a conspiracy to steal my home. I remembered my grandfather's lawyer, Mr. Blackwood. I remembered his words, "If you have any trouble at all, you call me directly." I called him. He listened patiently to my entire sordid story. When I was done, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Document everything." "Alex," he finally said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "Every letter, every visit, every word. Get a security camera. Let her build her case. Let her think she's winning. A person like Brenda, when they are blinded by their own arrogance, will always, always overplay their hand." When she does, we will be there to bring the entire house of cards down upon her head. So I waited. I documented. And Brenda, as predicted, continued to escalate. I came home one afternoon to find a professional surveyor on my property. He was hammering stakes into the ground, marking a new property line that would seed a beautiful front meadow to the HOA. He had been hired, of course, by Brenda. I showed him my own official survey map and had him removed from my property for trespassing. But the message was clear. She was no longer just talking. She was now physically trying to take my land. And then came the final blow. The move that she thought was her checkmate. I received a thick, intimidating envelope from the HOA's lawyer. It was a frivolous, but terrifyingly official-looking lawsuit. They were suing me for significant and ongoing damages to the community's property values due to the dilapidated and non-compliant state of my historic cabin. They were seeking a judgment from the court that would force the sale of my property to the HOA to cover the exolated cover. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages they had invented. I felt a wave of despair wash over me. She had done it. She had dragged me into a legal battle that I couldn't afford, a battle that could cost me my home, my grandfather's legacy. I went to confront her. I walked from my property to hers, the lawsuit in my hand. The argument was immediate and explosive. She accused me of threatening her. She accused me of being a violent, unstable squatter. And then, with a look of pure, triumphant malice in her eyes, she pulled out her phone. "I am calling 911, she said, her voice a low, menacing hiss. "And I am telling them that there is a hostile and unstable trespasser on my property who is making threats against my life. And I am going to have you arrested." And that brings us back to that moment. The moment the sheriff arrived. The moment she put on her hysterical, award-winning performance of a terrified victim. The moment it felt like she was about to succeed in having me, the actual victim, hauled away in handcuffs. But while she was on the phone with the police, I had made my one phone call. To Mr. Blackwood. I had explained the situation in a few quick, urgent sentences, and he had just said, in his calm, reassuring voice, "Stay calm, Alex. I'm on my way. Do not let them take you anywhere. I will be there in 20 minutes. Didn't know how he could possibly get from his downtown law office to my remote mountain cabin in 20 minutes. I didn't know he wasn't planning on taking his car. The arrival of the helicopter was a moment of pure cinematic shock and awe. The sheriff, the deputy, Brenda, everyone just stared, mouths agape, as this symbol of immense, unimaginable power descended from the sky. Mr. Blackwood, my grandfather's old, quiet lawyer, emerged like a king stepping out of his chariot. He was the picture of old money, establishment power, and the look on his face was one of cold, righteous fury. He didn't speak to the sheriff. He didn't speak to me. He walked directly up to a now silent and utterly bewildered Brenda, and he handed her his phone. "Brenda," he said, his voice quiet but carrying the unmistakable weight of a man who was used to being obeyed. "My client, Mr. Jonathan Thompson, the man who owns this entire valley, the man who developed this entire community, and the man who holds the mortgage on your own, personal, very expensive house, would like a word with you. He is on the line. And I suggest you choose your next words very, very carefully." The color drained from Brenda's face. She took the phone with a trembling hand. Cold, angry voice, a voice I recognized from the news as one of the most powerful and reclusive billionaires in the state, crackled from the speaker. "Brenda," the voice said, and it was a voice that did not suffer fools. "Mr. Blackwood has just informed me of your activities. You have been harassing, intimidating, and attempting to illegally seize the private property of the grandson of my oldest and dearest friend, Arthur Miller. You have done this on my land, in my development. You have exposed me and my company to a level of legal and financial liability that I find to be unacceptable." There was a long, terrible pause. "So here is what is going to happen." The billionaire's voice continued, cold and precise as a surgeon's scalpel. "As of this moment, your line of credit for the new wing you are building on your house is frozen. My bank will be calling in the note on your primary mortgage in full on Monday morning. And Mr. Blackwood will be representing Mr. Miller in A lawsuit against you, personally. A lawsuit which I will be funding, personally. You set out to ruin a good man's life, Brenda. So now I am going to ruin yours." The line went dead. Brenda just stood there, the phone in her hand, her face a crumbling ruin of abject horror. Her entire world, her entire identity, built on a foundation of her husband's borrowed wealth and her own petty, imagined power, had been completely and utterly dismantled in the space of a 2-minute phone call. The sheriff, who had listened to the entire conversation with his eyes wide with a dawning comprehension, now understood everything. He turned to Brenda, his face a mask of cold, professional anger, and he informed her that she was now under investigation for filing a false police report and for a sustained campaign of criminal harassment. Brenda was not just defeated, she was obliterated. She was facing financial ruin from the Calden loans. She was facing a massive, unwinnable lawsuit from me, a lawsuit that was being bankrolled by one of the wealthiest men in the country. She was removed from the HOA presidency in a panicked, unanimous vote of no confidence. My grandfather's lawyer, Mr. Blackwood, helped me get the ranch officially designated as a state historic landmark, protecting it and its legacy forever. From the greed of people like Brenda, this whole brutal, insane, and ultimately triumphant war taught me a profound lesson about the different layers of power in this world. Brenda thought that her HOA title, her new money, and her aggressive bullying tactics gave her power. She had no idea that she was just a small, noisy fish in a very large, very old, and very, very deep pond. She tried to bully a quiet, grieving man, never imagining that that man's grandfather, a man of character and loyalty, had friends in high places, silent, powerful titans who owned the entire valley and who did not, under any circumstances, suffer fools. Brenda and her husband were forced to declare bankruptcy and sell their house in a fire sale. But the billionaire developer, Mr. Thompson, has taken such a deep, personal interest in preserving my grandfather's legacy that he's now proposing to buy back the entire Whispering Valley estates, demolish all the new houses, and turn the entire valley back into a private, protected nature preserve, with my cabin as the only remaining residence.